After coaching hundreds of natural lifters for over a decade, I've seen what really works to build muscle and what doesn't. So let's dive in and make sure that you build more muscle in 2025 than you ever have before. There's 5 main keys that we got to cover to make sure this happens, with a few juicy bonuses at the end. The first one is creatine. I don't know what you're thinking, Alex, I've heard this 1,000 times before. I know, but creatine for a lot of people is still low-hanging fruit, meaning they're not even using it, or they're not using it consistently. And I remember reading a study that creatine, even within a few months, can help you add like 1.5, I believe, to 2.5 kg of muscle. That is a shitload of muscle. So again, it's just low-hanging fruit. If you're not taking it, definitely start taking it. You just need about 5 grams a day, every single day, just normal creatine monohydrate. It shouldn't be really expensive. You can get it from your local supplement store, online, your favorite brands, whatever, they all have it. And the biggest thing is just don't get sucked into any fancy marketing of like, this special creatine is different to monohydrate and it works better and faster and you need to load it and yada, yada, yada. Creatine's totally safe to use. It's the most backed supplement we have on the market, with the best studies showing that it works the best out of everything. Creatine can also be found in foods, like steak is a good one to get creatine from, but the only thing is, the reason why everyone supplements it and why you should is because it's just so hard to get the amount you need. Like, you would need to eat a copious amount of steak and other foods high in creatine. It's not really feasible. Number 2, training in the lengthened position. This is a massive mistake I made when I first started training. Is I wouldn't train everything in the lengthened position, or if I was getting a little bit weaker or fatigued, I would actually cut that part of the movement out. Incline dumbbell curl is a great example. Your biceps are completely stretched out at the bottom because you're on that incline. You get a really, really big, deep stretch in the bottom, and if you've done these before, that's where it fucking hurts, that part here. But what I would do is, with any movement, once I start fatiguing, I would just pump out some top half reps. Now, it's not a bad thing. Nothing bad's gonna happen if you're gonna do that, but you're missing out on probably the most beneficial portion of the movement to build as much muscle as possible. Another good example that I often see new clients come to us not doing is like a tricep movement. So triceps, probably the most common exercise is a push down, and it's a fantastic exercise. You can still get a nice big stretch on your triceps if you do it properly, coming all the way to the top, which we see a lot of people stopping here. If you're just going halfway, again, you're missing that top part of the movement where your tricep gets the most stretch. But even better, if you want to build the most muscle possible and you want to have developed arms, I would definitely make sure in your program somewhere, it doesn't have to be on the same day, have movements where you're training your triceps in that lengthened position, which means they're fully stretched. So my favorite example of this is like an overhead cable tricep extension. It feels amazing on the cables, in my opinion, and you can get those triceps fully stretched, and it's very, very easy to load because you can just go up in weight. Once you get to a weight where you're like, I'm plateauing, that's where you can up the reps, or you can up the sets. Which leads us to number 3, which is progressive overload. Still the gold standard for building muscle, still the main thing that all of us natty lifters should be focusing on. Progressive overload simply just means doing more over time. So adding load progressively, meaning more reps, more weight, more sets. Or in a lot of our cases, better technique, and that comes back to training in that lengthened position. Something else to think about with progressive overload, because I know a common question we get is like, what happens when I hit a plateau? Something that I also made a huge mistake on was thinking that you have to do massive jumps, and you need to actually sometimes look at it from a percentage standpoint. This helps me, rather than just a kgs or pounds standpoint. So what I mean by that is, let's take a movement like the leg press, where you can put some serious load on that thing and you can get the quads and legs absolutely pumping. Now, most people will just try to go up by 20 kg each side. You're trying to add 40 kgs of weight each week, or each time you try to progress on the leg press. Next time you go to the gym, have a look at someone doing the leg press, or even have a look at yourself. Have you ever added 5s on the leg press, or 10s, or even 15s? Probably not. And I'll be honest, I didn't do that for years. My first 5-6 years of training, I only went up by 20s on the leg press because I thought, well, it's a big machine. I've already got, 100 to 200 kegs on there, whatever, got a lot of weight on. What's a 5 kg little plate on each side gonna do? It's gonna do nothing, right? But it is, and especially if you look at it from a percentage standpoint. If you're stuck on 100 kgs on the leg press, for example, and you feel like you can't get any more reps with the same technique, or once you add more weight on, you probably slap 20s on, your form gets a little bit shit, or you cut out the bottom half, which, like we just spoke about, is the most important, then putting a 5 kg on each side, you've just added 10% to your total weight on the leg press. I know you might feel like a little bit of a bitch doing that, trust me, I did too, but it's a game changer. Imagine adding 10% to your revenue every week. You'd be pretty fucking stoked. Then of course, the next way to progressively overload is just adding more reps, and that's something I find myself doing quite often. I think as you get more experience and you do get a bit stronger, sometimes it can be hard to go up on the next weight rack, whether it's the cable or the next dumbbell or the next weight plate, whatever the machine is. But you can always add an extra rep, well, hopefully. Personally, I think that one comes down to actually tracking, so writing your reps down, whether you use an app, paper, whatever, it doesn't matter. Just don't try to remember exactly what you're getting, because in my experience, you can't remember every set, how many reps you got and all that kind of stuff every single week moving forward. Lastly, we have adding more sets. Let's say you're doing 2 sets for bench, you could add a 3rd set and see if you can keep the same weight for similar reps with an extra set. And that's just volume over the week. You're just adding more volume, which is progressive overload. Improving your form and technique. Now, to be honest, this one's the most boring, but it's probably the one that most of us could do with. This will not only decrease the risk of injuries, it's gonna massively improve how much muscle you build. And I guess that leaves us to the next main point, which is controlling the eccentric. This is probably another thing that I see in the gym most people doing wrong, and again, I did this wrong when I first started training. If I believe correctly, the studies show about 2 to 4 seconds on the eccentric is the sweet spot, and you'll build about the same amount of muscle as long as it's within that range. The eccentric is just the lowering portion of every movement. So next time you're training, if you're training today or tomorrow, give it a shot. Actually try and count your seconds on the eccentric, and I guarantee it'll probably be a bit faster than it should be. And even just have a look around in the gym next time you're training. How many people just drop that weight down within 1 second, curl back up, drop, curl back up, drop. Like a lot of people's curls look like this, and they're missing a huge part of the muscle gaining process, leaving a lot of gains on the table just by not going 1, 2, 3, come back up. Number 5, again, I'm like a fucking mistake book, aren't I? Just, if you avoid the shit I did, you're gonna make so much better progress, and by the time you've been training for as long as I have, you're gonna be like double as jacked I am. But number 5 is slightly longer rest periods. I know, it's another one, you're like, fuck's sake, Alex, these are so annoying. I know, they actually are, but do you wanna make gains or not? This is something that, again, we see clients doing let's just say not ideal. You give them a session, they tell you how fast they did it, and I already know for a fact they're not going slow enough on the eccentric because the set is probably way too fast, and they're not resting enough in between sets. The best way to tell this, honestly, if you want a rough guide, because I know numbers help a lot, about 2 minutes in between sets is ideal. But a way that I personally really like to tell is I don't time my rest period. I can just tell if I've rested long enough. Your breathing should steady, it should come back to normal. Your heart rate should come back down. The lactic acid in the muscle, depending on what you're doing, should kind of be gone. Of course, you're still gonna feel a pump, you're not gonna lose your pump, but you don't wanna go into the next set. If you're still breathing heavy, your heart rate's up, you're still feeling a bit like, fuck, that set was rough. You don't wanna go into the next one just yet, or you're not gonna be able to hit the amount of reps that you could, even with just an extra 60 seconds rest. Now, this one where people get a little bit annoyed at this and they're saying, well, what am I meant to do all the time? And I get it. You don't wanna be sitting on your phone just scrolling, because that just fucks with the flow of the workout as well. But just taking that extra minute can make a huge difference. Now, what about the opposite, resting for too long? Will that kill your gains? Actually, no. It's quite hard to rest too long, because you're still, unless you're resting to the point, when you get stuck in a conversation at the gym with someone and you're like, fuck, 15 minutes gone past, my pump's gone, you go into the next set feeling cold, yeah, that's too long. But if you don't get stuck in one of those combos, you won't rest too long. It's more so just gonna drag your session out and make it a bit too long. But hey, if you love being in the gym, you got nothing else to do, there's no harm in that. Look at powerlifters, for example, the strongest people on the planet, them strongmen, some of them rest like 8 to 10 minutes in between their sets. I'm not saying do that, don't worry, and you don't need to do that to build as much muscle as possible. I'm just saying that you'll be totally fine. A couple of bonus ones that aren't directly to do with training. The first one is gonna be sleep. Sleep is like a natural steroid. It's been shown time and time again that the better quality sleep you can get, the better you're gonna perform, the better you're gonna recover, and also muscle growth happens at all times outside the gym, not actually in the gym when we're training, and sleep is one of the biggest times that muscle growth actually happens. So the better you can dial in your sleep, the more muscle you're gonna build, the more you're gonna recover, the better you're gonna be able to train. Instead of me continuing to ramble, I'll just pop a few of the very simplest things that I do to improve sleep quality that helps me with my training a lot. The next biggest key, apart from training, is of course your nutrition. Now, that could be a whole separate video by itself, but very simply, if you wanna build the most muscle possible in 2025, you want to be in a slight calorie surplus for at least good chunks of the year, aka lean gaining phases. Now, please keep in mind, this is where a lot of people go wrong that we see. If you still have body fat to lose first, if you're not confident in your body fat levels, don't go into a calorie surplus to build more muscle, because you're gonna just put on more body fat and you're gonna actually hate the process and feel worse. But on the plus side, if you go into a calorie deficit to lose that body fat, if your training set up properly, if your nutrition is set up properly, your sleep, majority of you will actually be able to build muscle and lose some fat at the same time. Unless you've been training for more than 5 years, consistently proper training, you probably wouldn't be able to do that. Protein's the next biggest thing we should be looking at. Anywhere from 1.6 to 2 grams per kilogram of your body weight every single day, you'll be totally covered on protein. You're gonna need protein, of course, to build muscle. You can't build muscle without it. It is what it is. And then carbs, probably one of the most slept on things in terms of building muscle. Carbs are the main energy source for the body, and they're the main thing you need for hard training sessions. So trying to get some of your carbs around training, a pre-workout meal, a post-workout meal with a good amount of protein and carbs in, will set you up for some solid muscle building. The reason for that is you're gonna be able to train harder in the gym, which means you're gonna be able to lift more weight, be stronger, do everything we just went over, and then you're gonna have some carbs after, you're gonna recover better as well. The last thing to touch on is a few questions you're probably thinking, and some of the common ones we get from clients. The first is, how can I gain muscle without gaining fat? Now, this is a bit of a two-parter. So the first one is, depending on how much muscle you want to build and how fast you want to do it, you probably will gain a little bit of fat in the process, but that's totally fine. If you do a lean gaining phase, so you go into a little bit of a calorie surplus, meaning let's say your body requires 2,500 calories to stay the same weight. If you go 2,600 or 2,700 calories every day, you're in a small calorie surplus of about 100 to 200 per day. More than enough to build some muscle, but also not too much where you're just gonna gain a ton of fat. In terms of actually tracking this, I would recommend not gaining more than about 0.5% of your body weight per week. And honestly, that's fast. So if I weigh 80 kilos and I'm in a surplus, that would be 400 grams per week. That is actually quite fast, because over a month, that's gonna be 1.6 kilos gained. Personally, I like to go much on the slower end, but I also have been training for a long time. My gains come a lot slower, but I only like to gain a couple of 100 grams per week on average at maximum. A kilo a month is actually quite fast, which is about 2.2 pounds. A lot of people, when I say that, they think that's fucking slow. If you think about it, imagine you do a 6-month bulk. If you added 6 kilos of muscle to your frame, that's a shitload of muscle. You might not do that fast, but if you did, fucking hell, I need to learn from you. And then the last thing to not gain fat when you're gaining muscle is obviously starting from the best place possible. And that's why I said, if you do have some body fat that you want to lose first, don't go into a surplus. Do the deficit, get the body fat off first, and then gain from there. The leaner you are when you start your gaining phase, the better. Next most common question is, what's the most effective workout splits? That is a great question, and I probably should have been in the key points, so my bad. But the most effective workout splits is whatever you enjoy, whatever you can fit in your schedule and stick to consistently. Now, instead of thinking what's the perfect workout split, should I do push-pull legs, should I do bro split, should I do full body, I would just think about how many times are you training a muscle group per week? And that will kind of get rid of some of the splits. So for example, and the studies back this, if you train every muscle group twice a week instead of once a week, you will definitely build more muscle. So therefore, if you're currently doing a bro split, which again, mistake book, I used to do, if you go from a bro split to like a push-pull legs, you're gonna build more muscle. And that's exactly what happened to me. At about year 3 or 4 of training, I went from training chest day, back day, shoulder day to like push-pull legs. I put on a lot of muscle. I know it doesn't look like it though. And push-pull legs is just one example. You have to figure out first how many days per week you're gonna train, and that's the best way to figure it out. So let's say you're training 4 days a week, you could do upper, lower, upper, lower. Or if you're like, you know, fuck my legs, I just wanna get jacked up top, you can do 3 upper bodies and 1 lower body. And you can split up those sessions however you want. You could do a push day, a leg day, a pull day, and then a full upper day. There's so many different ways to do it. Just look at your week and try to make sure you're hitting every muscle group twice per week. And a little bit of a key pro tip is just to make sure you don't have overlapping muscle groups. So for example, personally, I wouldn't hit like quads on Monday and then hamstrings on Tuesday. Like you can, and I know a lot of people that do that, but personally, if I smash even if it's just my quads, my legs are gonna feel pretty heavy and fatigued, and then even if I go in to do some hammy curls, some RDLs, it just doesn't feel as good as what it could if there was at least a day in between. And whatever you do, don't hit chest on Monday, chest on Tuesday, chest on Wednesday. That's a good way to get injured. Next question, do I need to do cardio or will it kill my gains? Cardio will definitely not kill your gains. In some cases, it might actually enhance them because you'll be able to recover quicker depending on how much you're doing, what type of cardio, and that's a whole video in itself. But to give a quick example, if you can keep your cardio as far apart from your weight training as possible, that's ideal. But if it's just a quick, I just like to go for a 10-minute walk, 20-minute jog, you could do that after your weights. If you only have the one time to go to the gym, which most people do. So put all of your energy and freshness into your weight session and then hit your cardio after if you have to. I hope that was helpful, and now you know the current best ways to add the most muscle naturally. And if you're thinking, Alex, that's fucking great, I'm gonna do everything you said because you're an absolute legend, but I still have a little bit of body fat I wanna lose, all goods, check out this video for that.